anak-anak yang hadir. Terima kasih telah datang ke webinar kita hari ini. Karena ini sudah jam 1.30, jadi saya akan mulai sekarang. Jadi selamat datang ke webinar episode 5 yang dipersembahkan oleh Departemen Food Science and Nutrition dari I3L. Topik hari ini adalah Healthier Choice Symbol and Nutrition Label. Di sini kita akan mendiskusikan bagaimana peran Healthier Choice Symbol Program di Asia Tenggara dalam membentuk pemilihan konsumer terhadap makanan dan juga konsumsi gula, garam, dan lemak. Kita juga akan membahas tentang pengertian konsumen Indonesia mengenai label nutrisi. Baiklah, untuk susunan acara kita hari ini, kita akan mulai dengan opening. Perkenalkan nama saya Clara Marisa Olivia, saya adalah moderator untuk hari ini. Lalu berikutnya kita akan memasuki sesi dari pembicara pertama kita selama 30 menit, dilanjutkan dengan pembicara kedua selama 20 menit, dan pembicara ketiga selama 10 menit. Lalu kita akan ada sesi Q&A selama 30 menit, dan terakhir akan ada absensi dan evaluasi program. Baiklah, untuk guidelines webinar kita hari ini, jadi ada 3 peraturan utama. Yang pertama, tolong pastikan bahwa mic masing-masing di-mute, jadi kita biarkan pembicara kita biar berbicara dengan penuh konsentrasi. Lalu yang kedua, jika ada pertanyaan, silahkan ditulis langsung di fitur chat box, di fitur Q&A. Bisa dilakukan selama webinar berlangsung, dan tolong juga ditulis pembicara siapa yang dituju. Lalu yang ketiga, link untuk absensi dan evaluasi akan dibagikan di akhir acara. Lalu berikutnya kita akan melihat video singkat dari Departemen Food Science and Nutrition di I3L. Baiklah, sekarang kita akan melihat profil singkat dari pembicara kita hari ini. Pembicara kita yang pertama adalah Miss Pauline Chen, Master of Science. Beliau adalah Director of Scientific Programs for the South Asian Branch of the International Life Science Institute, atau ILCC. Miss Pauline Chen hari ini akan membicarakan topik tentang status of Healthier Choice Program in Southeast Asia region. Oke, pembicara kedua kita adalah Ibu Siti Muslimatun, PhD. Ibu Siti adalah dosen dari Fakulti Food Science and Nutrition di I3L atau Indonesia International Institute for Life Sciences. Ibu Siti Muslimatun hari ini akan membicarakan tentang sugar, salt, and fat, efforts to reduce their consumption. Lalu pembicara kita yang ketiga hari ini adalah alumni dari Food Science dan Nutrition dari I3L. Livia Yanika hari ini akan membawakan topik mengenai Mother's Understanding on Nutrition Label of Formula Milk. Baiklah, sekian introduction. Mari kita sekarang memulai dengan sesi pertama kita dari pembicara pertama, yaitu Miss Pauline Chan. Silakan Miss Pauline Chan bisa dimulai.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I believe it's my cue to start sharing the screen. I'm so sorry, I cannot understand Bahasa so well.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, so no problem. I'm assuming that you're asking me to stand by. Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Olivia. And good afternoon to everyone. I wish that I have the opportunity to have this face-to-face, interaction session with you all, but unfortunately, I cannot visit your country, so we will have to do this over the webinar. So hopefully, next year or in the future, I will be able to visit your school and I have the chance to have the meeting with you all face-to-face. So today, I was given the topic, status of front of pet labeling, in Southeast Asia by Ibu Siti. So I will be spending perhaps the next 30 minutes to share with you, what is actually the situation in terms of front of pet labeling in the region. So I will actually start by just giving you a very brief introduction on what front of pet labeling scheme is, and especially the types of front of pet labelings that we have globally, and then slowly zoom into the different types of FOPs that we have in our region. And finally, maybe just, so I saw somebody raising their hand. Are you able to hear me? Am I loud enough? My voice okay?
Yes, Ms. Pauline Chan.
Yeah, and then finally, just some of my thoughts, in the conclusion. Okay, so if we are talking about nutrition label, I think we are all, in those who are in the nutrition field would know that many of us are using nutrition label, as a very important tool for consumer communication, especially the nutrition information of the product. So when we talk about nutrition labels, we are usually referring to the NIP, or what we call the Nutrition Information Panel, or sometimes we call it nutrition facts. And it is usually commonly known as the back of pet labeling. So because you always find it at the back of the packaging. So this set of pet NIP gives you very detailed information on the nutritional content of the product, like how many grams of fat or how many calories you are getting from this particular product. So by giving you those information, we were hoping that the consumers will be using the information to make better and more informed food choices, okay? But there's also a lot of concerns about the usage of NIP because they feel that the use of NIP may not be the best or the most effective way of helping consumers to choose the foods wisely, because when you are in the supermarket, when you are picking up your food products, you may not have time to actually read the NIP because you are in a hurry. Sometimes, consumers are also asking the accuracy of the information. When you say this one gives me 260 calories, is it true? Is it really exactly 260? It's not 300, it's not 400? So there's a lot of questions about accuracy. And sometimes the people who are reading this nutrition information panel really don't understand, or they cannot interpret the nutrition information. Maybe because the font size of this NIP is very small, they can't read, especially for people who are a little bit older, for the elderly, they can't really see clearly the information. Or sometimes because of the language barrier, maybe the product is actually an imported product. They do not have the information in the local language, so many consumers may not be able to understand the information. So that is why there's suggestions to include what we call the more friendly types of nutrition labeling tools to complement this bag of pet NIPs, because they feel that the information of those nutritional contents can be presented in a different format on the front of the pack. and it's easier for consumers to understand, and so it's easier for them to make better choices. And that is why we have something called the front of pack labeling, because they are supposed to be a more user-friendly tools. And you will see that there are many different types of front of pack labelings, ranging from very, very simple, just one icon, to a very, very complicated system. So I'm going to show you the different types of front of pack labeling systems that we can see in the market. I actually categorize this into 3 major types. The first one, okay, over here is what we call fact-based information. So usually something like the GDP and the GDA type of logo, they actually just give you the factual information. So most of the time, they are just converting the NIP information to something that's easier to understand, and they put it on front of pack. And they also have the criteria-based kind of program, something like the Healthier Choice that we have in Indonesia. This is from Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia. And the last type of the front of pack, system is more complicated, is what we call the interpretative type. So you have the traffic light system where you have the green, they have the red, you have the amber color, or you have the score. So you would need to think and interpret the information before you make any decision. So it's the most complicated type. So as you can see, this is the easiest type of what we call the fact-based system. And this is a typical, a GDA type of icon. You just basically give you a very simplified presentation of calories, as well as some key nutrients like fat or salt or sugar. So it's just converting the back of pack into this very easily identified icons. And in addition to the absolute amount of calories or the content of the nutrients, they also usually include what we call the percentage of contribution of the daily calories and the nutrient allowances. For example, if they not only have the amount of calories, but they also tell you that this kind of product, every serving will contribute to 7% of your total calorie allowance, okay? So there is no so-called introduction of whether it's a better food for you or it's not a healthier choice for you. That kind of concept is just basically telling you the qualitative kind of information. The next type of FOP is what we call the criteria. We can see that this is all the healthier choice type of FOP programs. And there are so many different types of symbols that you can see used by different countries. And different countries use different criteria or guidelines to differentiate which products are qualified for this icon or for this so-called symbol. Some countries use qualifying criteria. Some countries use disqualifying criteria, and it's mostly qualitative gradings. They do not give you any quantitative information. So by just looking at this icon or this logo, you do not know how much fat you are getting or how many calories you are getting from the food, but you know that it is supposed to be a better for you, or it's a healthier choice among maybe the same categories of products. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, the most complicated form of FOP. So they combine the factual information, like the calories, the gram of fat, together with the so-called, prior judgment, like the traffic light system. So if you see the green, it means that maybe it's better for you. If you see the red, maybe it means it's not so good for you. It's quite bad for you. But it's a very complicated system, and not everyone can understand. Imagine if you are just a consumer and you see this icon, okay, on the packaging. It says salt is 2 grams, so it's red. And it says fat is 6.8 grams, is green. Saturated fat, green. Total sugar, green. Calories, amber. What does this mean to you? You have 3 green. You have maybe 1 red, 1 amber. So is it good? Is it not so good? Okay. Compare this with something that is all amber. There's no red, okay, it's all amber, So is it better because there's no red? So it's very confusing for the consumer. So you really need to interpret and understand, certain nutrition information for you to make that certain decision. Okay, so now let's look at what are the different types of front of pack schemes that we have in our regional countries. I will be covering about 5 to 6 countries today. The first country I wanted to share with you is Brunei, because Brunei also implements voluntary healthier choice logo kind of front of pack. So, which means that in Brunei, it's actually a criteria-based kind of program in terms of front of pack labeling. They wanted to use this healthier choice program, scheme to help their consumers to choose healthier products and, of course, promote healthy eating. So this voluntary program started in Brunei as early as 2004. But when they started the program in 2004, they only use it for cooking oil. So only one category of the products that can carry this healthier choice. So the intention is to help to consumers to identify which type of cooking oil is better. However, they realized that they need to extend to more categories. So in 2017, the program has expanded from just one category to many, many different categories. And they actually also published this nutrient criteria of food and beverages with the Healthier Choice Program guidelines in 2017 to help the industries to come up with, whether their products are actually able to meet the criteria. So as of now, based on this publication, they have criteria for a total of 12 main food categories that covers foods like beverages categories, cereal, dairies, eggs, fats and oils, fruits and vegetables, legumes, nuts and seeds, meat and poultry, seafood, sauces and recipe mix, table salt and snacks, and finally miscellaneous, which covers probably anything that is not really there. Okay, and in this booklet you will also find criteria. If you wanted to become a healthier choice kind of beverage, what kind of criteria you need to meet in order for you to be qualified. And in this book, they also actually lay down the whole process for the application to the Health Promotion Center of the Ministry of Health. And I believe that it's actually free of charge when you apply to the Health Promotion Center. So once you meet all the criteria, you submit all the information, including the analysis report, they will actually approve your application and you're allowed to carry that logo on your food packaging. So this is the process and the type of front of pack labeling we can find in Brunei. Then how about Indonesia? I was debating whether I wanted to talk about Indonesia because I believe you all know, but I thought that it's good to include just to have a summary. So in terms of the front of pack labeling schemes in Indonesia, it's pretty new because only last year in 2029, in August and September, we have the new nutrition labeling regulations published by BPON. And in this new regulation, they actually highlighted that there are 2 types of front of pack labeling schemes that we can use in Indonesia. The first type of scheme, the front of pack scheme, is what we call the Healthier Choice logo kind of scheme. So at this moment, there are only 2 categories of foods that are allowed to carry the Healthier Choice logo in Indonesia. The first category is what we call the ready-to-drink beverages. Okay, so as long as you meet this criteria and you are part of the ready-to-drink beverage categories, then you can actually carry this logo. So the criteria for this category is that every 100 ml of the beverage, you are not allowed to have more than 6 grams of sugar, and this sugar is excluding lactose. Okay, so if you, let's say it's a milk-based product, then your total sugar is not going to exceed 6 grams, but you can actually exclude the amount of lactose from this criteria. But for this category, you must make sure that you also do not add any sweeteners, whether it's artificial or natural. So you can cut down the sugar, but you cannot add in any food additive sweeteners to sweeten up the beverages. Another category that's qualified to carry this logo is the instant pasta or the instant noodles. So as long as you do not have more than 20 grams of fat per 100 grams or no more than 900 milligrams of sodium per 100 grams in the product, then you are actually qualified to carry this Healthy Choice logo. We understand that, of course, besides these 2 categories, there are many, many different types of foods that are interested to carry the Healthy Choice logo. So there are now ongoing discussions to develop the nutrient profiles or the criteria for additional categories. So the organization that I'm working for, the UC International Life Science Institute, and our country committee actually just collaborated with BPOM in November, in about a month, 1.5 months time ago. We organized this meeting to really help them to facilitate the discussion about, you know, this, to develop more criteria for additional categories. The other scheme for Indonesia, besides the Healthy Choice logo, is what we call the GDA type. Okay, this type of scheme covers a total of 5 nutrients, including calories. So it's nutrient, total fat, saturated fat, sodium, and of course sugar. Okay, and sugar is without the lactose. So these are the nutrients that you're allowed to put on your icon on the front of pack. Okay, but remember, when you choose to put the GDA label on your front of pack, they must all be in the same color. So it means that you are not allowed to have, let's say, calorie in green, then fat in red, and then saturated fat in amber color. It must be uniform, same color. But for food products that do not contain one or more of the nutrients, for example, this is a product that doesn't have any fat at all, then you do not need to actually include this icon on your packaging. But if you contain significant amount of all these 5, then you must contain all these 5 icons on your artwork, on your label. Now, let me move on to Malaysia. In Malaysia, there are also 2 different types of front of pack labeling being implemented, just like Indonesia. The first one is what we call the GDA type. So it's actually a energy icon program. So in Malaysia, unlike Indonesia, they only let you use the icon to reflect the amount of calories on your front of pack, you know, labels. So you only present the amount of calories, and besides the absolute amount of calories, they also need you to actually express the amount of calories per serving as a percentage of NRV based on the 2,000 calorie diet. So if you, every serving of this product gives you 165 calories, then it's contributing to about 8% of the total amount of calories that, you know, you are allowed to have per day. Okay, so of course it really depends on your actual calorie allowance, but this is something that, you know, it's an average of 2,000. So this is actually the voluntary fat-based FOP scheme in Malaysia. The other type of FOP in Malaysia is actually the Healthy Choice. But in terms of the energy icon, okay, it's voluntary, but I just wanted to highlight to you that even though it's voluntary, but it becomes mandatory for products carrying the Healthy Choice logo. So if you are a Healthy Choice product, food product, you must also carry the energy icon. And you, just like in Indonesia, you are only allowed to have the monochrome colors, and you are recommended to avoid the traffic light colors like the red color or the green color or the amber color, if possible. Okay. So, of course, the second type of scheme in Malaysia is the Healthy Choice logo. The Healthy Choice logo was only implemented in Malaysia in 2017, okay? And it's actually implemented by the FSQD under the Ministry of Health Malaysia. And at the moment, based on the latest handbook on guidelines of Healthy Choice logo Malaysia, which was just published several months ago in May 2020, they provide criteria for 9 main categories. And under these 9 main categories, there are an additional 46 subcategories. Okay, and as of now, October 2020, I understand that a total of 388 products, food products or beverage products, have been approved, you know, by the relevant authorities. Again, you can actually download this list if you're interested to find out which are the Healthy Choice products. You can go to this website and download the list. I just show you number 1 all the way to number 388. Okay. And in this handbook that published in May, they also list out the whole process and also the criteria of what you need, and also the flow of what you need to do if you are interested to submit for the application of this Healthy Choice logo scheme. Okay, so now I'm going to gradually move on to the Philippines. In the Philippines, they actually started implementing this, what we call Wise Eat symbol, something like the healthier choice symbol, very early, you know. But they were facing quite a lot of challenges. There's a lot of challenges, especially expressed by the food industries, and there's no consensus in terms of the criteria. So that is why in 2012, the government decided not to continue with the Wise Eat kind of program, and they actually recommended to implement the GDA kind of front of pack labeling in 2012. And they also issue a FDA circular on the guidelines for the voluntary declaration of front of pack, which is what we call the energy or calorie content on the labels. Okay, so far most of the front of pack labelings in those countries that I mentioned earlier are all voluntary. None of them is mandatory. So it's up to the manufacturers whether they wanted to implement or not. Okay, so they implemented this program on a voluntary basis in 2012, and they also recommend a standardized label format which you can use on your pre-packed food products, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so they only focus on the calories. So you have the calories here. Okay, how many gram servings? Let's say this is actually a 100-gram serving. Each serving is 100 grams. So you must indicate that it's 100-gram servings contain how many calories, and it meets how many % of the calorie requirements based on Philippines recommended energy and nutrient intake. Okay, or what we call the Philippines RDA. So just like Malaysia, they only have that for the calories. They do not have that for the other nutrients. So FDA actually encourages all food manufacturers to go and revise their labels and include this GDA front of pack on calories or on energies on their front of pack labeling. And in just over the last few years, since they released the 2015, the latest PTRI, the Philippine, dietary reference intake levels, there were plans to add more nutrients to this front of pack labels. In addition to the calories, they are talking about maybe including one for sodium and then including another one for sugar. However, there's just ongoing discussions, but there's no any published regulations or guidelines or circulars issued on the addition or inclusion of this additional nutrients. So as of now, there's only just one GDA type of icon, which is for the calories or for the energy. Now, I'm going to share with you the program that we have in Singapore. Singapore only has one kind of FOP, which is the Healthier Choice symbol, administered by the Health Promotion Board of Singapore. And I would say that Singapore probably is the very first country who implemented the front of pack labeling in the whole region, because they started the Healthy Choice logo program in 1998. Okay, so this labeling, this HCS or the front of pack labeling program is actually based on the guidelines that's established by Health Promotion Board. And since they started the program in 1998, they have gone through many rounds of revision to change or update the criteria, to change the different categories to make it more comprehensive. And the latest round of revision was actually done in June this year, June 2020. Again, just like the countries that we mentioned earlier, the Healthy Choice symbol program is voluntarily implemented in Singapore. So you do not want, if you do not want to carry that logo or you do not want to put that logo on your packaging, that is fine because it's only voluntary. So in Singapore, after so many rounds of revision, now the latest guideline shows that there are a total of 9 main categories that covers beverages, cereals, protein, fats and oils, fruits and vegetables, sauces, spread and condiments, snacks, convenient meals, and desserts. So it looks like it's not a lot, it's only 9 main categories. But if you look at the sub or even the subcategories, we actually cover a total of 112 subcategories. So you can see some categories has a lot of subcategories like beverages, we actually have 20 subcategories. Protein, we have 19. This is actually a newly revised category. So it covers all the meat, dairy products, anything that is high in protein. Where previously it was actually, in different categories, like milk and meat or seafood are all in different categories. But now in June 2020, they group everything under protein. So the nutrition guidelines were developed according to each product category or subcategory. So most of the products which can carry this Healthier Choice logo are usually, of course, low in fat, low in total or saturated fat, low in trans fat, low in sodium, low in sugar, but in general are higher in fiber, are whole grains, higher in calcium, etc. Okay, so at the moment, as of October 2020, we have already more than 5,000 products which are carrying the Healthier Choice logo. And we also have different types of Healthier Choice logo. It looks the same to you, but if you look at the tagline underneath the logo, it reads different. So it depends on the category. So for example, if it's a beverage category, maybe your tagline is low in sugar. And if you're talking about cereal, maybe it's something like higher in whole grains. So it depends on the category. Then you can actually use the relevant Healthier Choice logo. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, the companies can submit the applications online for free. They need to submit the nutrient analysis report for the products, and it has to be from the laboratory. You are not allowed to use, at the moment, you cannot submit the nutrient analysis using the computerized database. You actually have to send to the laboratory for the actual analysis. And they have actually an online, very friendly online application, process, which you can actually go and visit the HPB website to find out the more details. Okay. So those are some of the products that you can see in Singapore in the market that carries a Healthier Choice logo. For example, this is the bread, and this is actually, the beverages. So you can see the icon that says low in sugar. And this is actually whole grains. So here it says, high in whole grains. So again, depends on what category of the food products that you have. Okay, now I think the last country I wanted to share with you is actually from Thailand. And Thailand is a little bit more, I would say, complicated. In Thailand, there are also two types of front of pack labeling. And the first one is what we call the GDA types, the fact-based front of pack labeling. I think Thailand probably is the only country that implements mandatory front of pack labeling for the GDA type for a few food categories. They implemented this mandatory GDA labeling as early as in 2011. And they released several rounds of notification since year 2011. The latest round of notification was actually published in 2018. And the difference between the 2011 version and 2018 version is that they have expanded the categories. Okay, let me just show you. In 2011, when they started the mandatory GDA labeling, they only chose 5 priority snack food categories. Okay, at that time, only 5 snack foods are requested or required to carry this GDA labeling. But from 2018 onwards, a total of 13 main food categories are mandatorily required to carry this GDA type of labeling. The label includes the declaration of icons in calories, energy, sugar, fat, and sodium. And of course, including not just the absolute amount, but also the percentage based on the Thai RDA per package. But the interesting thing that I would like to bring your attention to is that this declaration of GDA is not based on per serving or per 100 grams like the other countries. It's actually based on per packaging. So if your packaging is actually for 20 servings, you will actually need to declare those nutrients as per packaging is, so it means that it's actually for 20 servings. Okay, so that is the difference between the Thai kind of scheme and the other countries' GDA schemes. So you can see that they expanded to many, many more categories. In the beginning, in 2011, it's only this particular category. But now, besides the snacks category, chocolates, bakery products, semi-processed foods, frozen or chilled ready-to-eat meals, beverages, ready-to-drink tea or any, in liquid form or ready, dry form or powder form, ready-to-drink coffee in either liquid form or dry form, flavored milk, fermented milk, or any other new products, soybean beverages, and ready-to-eat ice cream. All these categories are required to carry the GDA labels on their front of packaging. So you can see that this is actually a potato chips. You can see the icon here. And this is a drink. You can see the icon here. Oh, I think maybe they are requested to actually add in all, okay? However, I think they also make exception if your, let's say your product doesn't carry fat, or let's say there's no sodium or not a significant amount of sodium, you can also apply to see whether you are able to remove that from your packaging. But most of the products are required to carry all the 4 icons. So this is actually the GDA type of labeling in Thailand. But in Thailand, they also have another voluntary type of labeling called the Healthier Choice logo. And this is actually the logo that they use in Thailand. So this is actually the very cute lady, okay, the icon for also the Healthier Choice logo. So this is actually based on the notification of the Ministry of Public Health published in 2016. So it's been implemented from August 2016 onwards. So even though the regulation or notification was issued by the Ministry of Public Health under the FDA, but the whole program is actually in fact managed by the Nutrition Promotion Foundation under the Nutrition Institute under the Mahidol University. Okay, so if you are interested to know the criteria, you can actually download. I give you also the link in both languages. So this is really just like what we mentioned earlier for Singapore, for Malaysia, for Brunei, and for Indonesia, the healthier choice, the better for you kind of FOP. Very easy to understand. If you see this logo, it means that actually it's actually a healthier choice product. And currently, as of August 2020, it's been implemented to cover 11 main food categories, like the beverages, the seasonings, the dairy products, instant food, meal, ice cream, snacks, fats and oil, bread, breakfast cereals, and bakery products. I believe these breakfast cereals and bakery products were the newly added categories in 2020. And according to Dr. Visit, who presented at the meeting in Jakarta as a webinar in November, he reported to us that as of August 2020, in Thailand, there's actually a total of 1,850 products that have been approved, okay, from 295 companies. However, available in the current supermarket or retail outlet, you're only able to find 806 products with this Healthier Choice logo. Maybe some products have been discontinued, or maybe some products have not been launched yet, but they actually apply for the logo first. Okay, so if you go and visit Thailand in the supermarket, you can find up to 806 products carrying this logo. Okay, so I have been giving you a very brief review of the types of front of pack labelings that we can find in the different ASEAN countries where they implement, whether mandatorily or voluntarily, the kind of FOP programs. So I think in terms of summary, we can say that many people may agree also with me that front of pack labeling can be considered as a user-friendly tool to complement the back of pack labels. Because in most countries, if you carry the front of pack logo, you must make sure that you have the back of pack NIP included. Okay, that's becoming mandatory and compulsory. So with those two sets of tools, we hope that the consumers can make use of those information and make better and healthier food decisions. So just bear in mind that most of them are implemented voluntarily, except the GDA labeling in Indonesia, which is required mandatorily in the 13 groups of food categories. And there are 3 types of food front of pack labelings: fact-based, like the GDA; criteria-based, like the healthy choice; and the evaluative type, like the START rating. Okay, and now most of the countries are also waiting for the CCFL, the Codex Committee on Food Labeling, to actually come out with a Codex guideline for the front of pack labeling, so they can decide whether they wanted to develop their own national guidelines or regulations for front of pack labeling. But my thoughts, this is my last slide, but my thoughts in terms of implementing front of pack labelings in our region is like, we really need to consider several factors before we decide whether you want to implement this as a mandatory or voluntary scheme. First of all, we need to ask ourselves, what is the key objective or message of implementing this kind of front of pack program? Is it to help the consumers to make better choices? Or is it to help the industries to push them to come up with better products? Or maybe there are other objectives. So we really need to understand what is the objective. And the other thing that you need to also consider is that what kind of tools you want to implement. Do you want to have very simple tools, or you wanted to have a complicated tools? If you wanted to have complicated tools, then you must make sure that you have good education programs to promote the understanding of those programs to your consumers. And you may also want to think of too many programs, it's also confusing for the consumers. You need to understand what is the level of knowledge, nutrition knowledge among your consumers. A lot of education will be needed. And in terms of the criteria-based kind of program, you will need to develop the criteria. So you will need to decide on which nutrients you want to focus on. Is it just, calories? Is it calcium? Is it protein? I mean, different countries may have different problematic nutrients that they need to decide on. So besides what kind of nutrients you need to decide, the level of nutrients or the criteria, you also need to decide how to categorize your food. As I mentioned earlier, Singapore has gone through many, many rounds of review to make sure that they reflect the actual trends, the actual categorization. So milk can be one category, or you can be merged like in Singapore with all the other protein foods. So again, it's a decision that the country needs to make. And the criteria, is it across all food categories or just compare within the same category like most of the countries are doing right now? That's another factor that the countries need to decide. But the most important thing, I think, is that once you decide to have this front of pack labeling, then you must make sure that it's implemented effectively and meet the objective, and will be able to really convince the consumers to choose healthier and better food choices. So this is my last slide. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pauline Chan. Thank you for sharing such valuable information. We will hold the questions for you and put it together with the overall question and answer sessions. Now let's move on to our second pembicara kedua kita, yaitu Miss Siti Muslimatun. Topik beliau tentang sugar, salt, and fat, efforts to reduce their consumption. Silakan Ibu Siti, saya persilakan untuk share screen.
Terima kasih Miss Clara. So, sekarang saya akan share screen dulu ya. Baik, di mana ini kok jadi hilang? No, it's not. Yeah, wait a minute. Nah, ya, oke. Hari ini saya akan sharing mengenai sugar, salt, and fat, ya, efforts to reduce their consumption. Jadi akan ada 3 topik yang akan saya bicarakan mengenai manfaat dari mengurangi konsumsi garam, gula, dan lemak. Kemudian bagaimana konsumsi garam, gula, dan lemak di Indonesia. Dan yang ketiga adalah apa yang dapat kita lakukan untuk mengurangi konsumsi garam, gula, dan lemak. Seperti tadi disampaikan oleh Miss Pauline, bahwa sekarang di dunia sedang berlomba-lomba untuk mengurangi konsumsi garam, gula, dan lemak. Mengapa? Karena ada satu studi yang ini kalau dikerjakan selama di tingkat dunia, ini yang menjadi contoh adalah pengurangan garam dan kemudian juga pengurangan lemak dan peningkatan program-program yang dapat menurunkan tekanan darah tinggi. Jadi apabila konsumsi garam dapat dikurangi hingga 30%, jadi kalau misalnya sekarang rata-rata 10 gram, dan kalau dikurangi 30% artinya menjadi 7 gram. Kemudian apabila program pengurangan tensi darah itu bisa mencakup 75% dari kelompok sasaran, atau dapat mengurangi konsumsi lemak trans sebesar 0,5% dari asupan energi, maka sebenarnya kita dapat menghindarkan kematian sebanyak 94 juta dalam waktu 25 tahun. Ini di tingkat dunia ya. Kemudian ada studi lain, ini secara modeling yang dilakukan di Inggris, bahwa yang menunjukkan bahwa dengan mengurangi konsumsi gula sebanyak 25 kilokalori pada anak-anak atau 19 kilokalori, sebentar ini, 19 kilokalori pada orang dewasa setiap hari. Ini jadi kira-kira setengah sendok makan, itu dapat mengurangi masalah obesitas sebesar 5,5%. Dan dampaknya besar karena itu artinya dapat mengurangi banyak kasus diabetes, kasus penyakit jantung, dan juga kasus kanker kolon, dan dapat menghemat biaya kesehatan. Jadi mengapa kita perlu mengurangi konsumsi? Nah, sekarang di Indonesia bagaimana sih konsumsinya? Nah, ibu-ibu, bapak-bapak, dan adik-adik sekalian, kalau untuk konsumsi itu kita harus mengingat tentang saran isi piringku, ya. Ini adalah diet gizi seimbang kita, bahwa sepertiga makan kita harus bersumber dari karbohidrat yang whole grains, ya, atau umbi dan akar-akaran yang mengandung banyak kompleks karbohidrat. Kemudian mengkombinasikan pangan hewani dan nabati sebagai sumber protein, termasuk juga susu dan olahannya. Kemudian 1/6 piring kita berisi buah-buahan yang bermacam-macam, dan apabila dibuat dalam bentuk jus, kita harus mengurangi gulanya. Ya. Kemudian kalau untuk sayur-sayuran juga pilihlah sayur-sayuran yang berwarna dan dari seluruh bagian tanaman. Dan ini adalah 1/3 dari piring kita. Kemudian ada pesan lain, yaitu bahwa kita harus membatasi konsumsi gula, garam, dan lemak. Gula sebanyak 4 sendok makan, garam sebanyak 1 sendok teh, dan lemak sebanyak 5 sendok makan. Selain kita harus cuci tangan, olahraga, minum air putih, dan rajin menimbang berat badan kita. Nah, di Indonesia sendiri konsumsi gula itu adalah rata-rata sehari kita sebanyak 26 gram per hari, dan yang mengonsumsi di atas 50 gram atau tadi 4 sendok itu laki-laki lebih banyak, yaitu 16%, perempuan lebih sedikit 7%, ya. Kemudian kalau garam, nah ini sarannya tadi kan 1 sendok teh atau 5 gram. Nah ini kita lihat bahwa lebih dari separuh dari masyarakat Indonesia itu mengonsumsi garam yang berlebih. Apalagi kalau yang mengonsumsi 10 gram, di atas 10 gram itu sekitar 20%. Ini juga angka yang besar, karena tadi salah satu penyebab meningkatnya tekanan darah tinggi adalah konsumsi garam yang berlebihan, ya. Nah, kalau lemak itu 5 sendok makan, ternyata 1/3 dari penduduk kita, sekitar 1/3 ya, 27%, itu mengonsumsi lebih dari 67 gram per hari atau 5 sendok makan. Jadi angka ini sebenarnya sudah cukup mengkhawatirkan. Secara total, penduduk Indonesia yang mengonsumsi gula berlebih, garam berlebih, dan lemak berlebih itu sebanyak 30%. Dan tadi angkanya dari garam, ya. Nah, terus apakah garam, gula, dan lemak itu jelek semua? Sebenarnya enggak juga, karena garam itu penting untuk menjaga keseimbangan cairan dan juga bagus untuk sistem syaraf dan sistem otot. Kemudian gula juga menyediakan sumber energi ya untuk aktivitas kita. Dan lemak, terutama jenis lemak yang baik, yaitu lemak esensial, kemudian lemak rantai panjang tidak jenuh. Nah, itu penting untuk perkembangan otak. Nah, dalam masakan, kalau kita lihat singkong yang sederhana ini, kalau kita rebus, kita kukus saja, itu penampakannya tidak menarik ya. Tapi ketika kita tambahkan garam, gula, dan minyak, maka kita akan mempunyai banyak jenis olahan singkong yang menarik dan yang enak. Tapi apa dampaknya dari pengolahan ini adalah kita lihat di sini sebagai contoh untuk kentang. Kalau kentangnya kita rebus saja, itu memang kandungan lemak, garam itu sedikit. Tapi begitu kita tambahkan garam, maka direbus tambah garam, maka sodiumnya meningkat, ya, atau natriumnya meningkat. Dibuat salad juga lemaknya meningkat. Digoreng juga, apalagi dibuat keripik. Nah, itu kita lihat bahwa angka sodiumnya atau natriumnya berlipat kali jauh lebih banyak. Nah, terus apa yang dapat kita lakukan untuk mengurangi konsumsi garam, gula, dan lemak? Tadi Miss Pauline menyebutkan adalah mengenai label pangan. Itu adalah dalam ranah kebijakan. Jadi kalau kita bedakan strateginya, ada dari segi kebijakan dan ada dari diet kita. Nah, kebijakan itu ada pajak, ada label, ada pendidikan, dan juga mewajibkan industri untuk mereformulasi resepnya. Di diet, untuk makan kita sehari-hari, maka kita juga harus mengurangi melalui pendekatan perubahan pola makan, pengurangan, penggantian, atau mengganti resep kita, atau kita juga mengenalkan pangan-pangan yang rendah gula, garam, dan lemak. Nah, ini sebagai contoh untuk garam ya. Kalau kita ingin mengurangi garam, maka ada berbagai cara sebenarnya, dari mengganti matriks dan tekstur pangan kita, atau memodifikasi rasa dan aroma pangan kita, atau mengganti juga mineral jenis garam yang kita gunakan, misalnya dari NaCl menjadi KCl, atau yang paling wajar yang kita kerjakan, yang bisa kita kerjakan adalah dengan mengurangi secara bertahap. Ya. Tadi pengurangan dari label, tadi itu adalah pengurangan secara bertahap. Ya. Karena begini, sensori kita atau persepsi kita tentang rasa itu suatu kebiasaan yang dapat dipelajari. Jadi misalnya kalau kita biasa makan, dikenalkan dengan makanan dengan garam, maka kita akan merasa enak, memberikan kenikmatan, dan itu membuat kita mengonsumsi lebih banyak. Prinsip itu dapat kita juga terapkan apabila kita ingin mengurangi konsumsi kita. Jadi misalnya adalah dengan apabila kita mengurangi garam yang kita masukkan ke dalam makanan kita, maka makanan-makanan yang biasanya kita rasa biasa saja akan menjadi lebih asin sehingga menjadi tidak enak lagi, sehingga kita akan dapat mengonsumsi makanan yang lebih rendah kandungan garamnya. Jadi kita juga dapat mentrain itu, melatih indera perasa kita, dan memang tidak mudah dan tidak cepat, karena itu bisa berlangsung bisa setahun, 2 tahun, agar rasa kita berubah. Ya. Nah, cara-cara yang dapat kita kerjakan selain melatih indera pengecap kita adalah dengan mempelajari label pangan dan juga memperhatikan berapa saji, takaran saji yang ada dalam makanan yang kita makan dari pangan olahan ya. Nah, saya tidak membicarakan banyak ini karena tadi sudah disampaikan dengan banyak oleh Miss Pauline dan juga nanti Livia akan menyampaikan lebih banyak lagi. Kemudian kita juga harus mengerti makanan-makanan apa saja yang kandungan garam, gula, dan lemaknya tinggi. Misalnya ini martabak, menarik kelihatannya, tetapi itu gula, garam, dan lemaknya tinggi sekali. Kemudian apa saja yang kita tambahkan pada makanan kita, misalnya bumbu, saus, atau hal-hal yang lainnya, kecap. Nah itu juga merupakan sumber garam, gula atau lemak ya. Buahnya enak, tapi ketika kita makan rujak kita tambahkan saus, maka artinya kita menambah garam dan gula. Nah, kita juga dapat menggunakan bumbu-bumbu atau bumbu atau rempah-rempah ya, agar menghasilkan rasa dan aroma yang lebih baik. Kemudian juga mengurangi cara memasak kita, misalnya daripada digoreng, kita merebus atau memanggang. Ya. Kemudian mengurangi juga pangan olahan, kita lebih banyak menggunakan pangan segar misalnya, atau karena biasanya pangan olahan itu banyak mengandung garam. Kemudian kalau kita makan di restoran, maka kita juga minta menu yang rendah garam misalnya. Dengan demikian, yang ingin saya sampaikan adalah bahwa sebenarnya kita mampu dan harus mau berusaha untuk mengurangi konsumsi gula, garam, dan lemak melalui melatih indera perasa kita dan juga merubah cara kita mempersiapkan makanan kita. Karena tadi dengan adanya upaya dari pemerintah mengenai label, mengenai pilihan lebih sehat, artinya apa? Kita harus mendukung upaya-upaya tersebut dengan melatih indera perasa kita. Jangan sampai kita membeli, misalnya nih ya, minuman coklat yang sudah mempunyai resep baru, yaitu gulanya tadi dikurangi ya. Sekarang adalah 6 gram atau kurang per 100 ml. Karena biasanya misalnya 12 gram, berarti mengurangi setengahnya kan. Terus kita rasa, kok sekarang minuman coklat ini kurang manis ya. Kita tambah dengan gula. Nah itu salah, karena memang resep itulah yang sudah dibuat oleh industri pangan agar memenuhi syarat kandungan gula yang disarankan agar membantu kesehatan kita. Jadi jangan kita tambahkan gula. Mungkin seperti itu. Jadi kita dapat membantu mensukseskan program pemerintah dengan memilih pangan yang lebih sehat dan juga melatih indera perasa kita dan mempersiapkan pangan kita dengan lebih baik. Mungkin itu yang dapat saya sampaikan. Terima kasih banyak atas perhatiannya.
Baiklah, terima kasih banyak Ibu Siti Muslimatun atas informasi yang berharga. Sekarang kita akan melanjutkan ke pembicara ketiga kita. Baik, silakan Livia Janika untuk share screen.
Ya. Selamat siang Bapak, Ibu, dan kakak-kakak sekalian. Perkenalkan, saya Livia Janika, alumni dari I3L. Dan sekarang saya bekerja sebagai intern di Business Development di Akasa Wira Internasional. Topik saya kali ini sedikit berbeda dari pembahasan Miss Pauline dan Miss Siti sebelumnya, di mana mereka membahas tentang regulasi dan juga teori yang ada. Di topik saya kali ini, saya akan membahas pengetahuan dan pengertian ibu terhadap nutrition label yang ada di susu formula pada balita. Zat gizi sangatlah penting dalam setiap tahap tumbuh kembang kita sebagai makhluk hidup. Seiring dengan tumbuh kembang yang terus berjalan, zat gizi yang kita perlukan untuk dalam tubuh pun juga berubah. Sehingga dalam setiap tahapnya kita memerlukan nutrisi dan jumlah yang berbeda-beda. Nah, termasuk di dalam tahap balita ini, di mana balita merupakan tahap transisi dari perpindahan anak dari masa bayi menuju masa anak-anak. Kenapa di masa balita itu sangat penting? Karena di masa balita ini, mereka penuh dengan ide dan energi, di mana mereka aktif mengeksplor lingkungan mereka, berinteraksi dengan orang-orang di sekitar mereka, dan juga mengobserv apa yang terjadi di sekitar mereka. Di masa ini juga terjadi pertumbuhan yang sangat cepat, baik secara fisik, kognitif, maupun psikis yang ada. Dan di tahap ini juga, anak yang kita punya itu mulai diperkenalkan dengan makanan yang sangat beragam. Baik awalnya minumnya mungkin susu formula atau ASI, namun di tahap balita ini mereka mulai mengenal makanan-makanan yang mulai sedikit lebih solid ataupun yang rasanya yang berbeda-beda. Maka dari itu di tahap ini dibutuhkan nutrisi yang seimbang untuk menjaga tumbuh kembangnya mereka. Nah, untuk asupan ini sendiri dipengaruhi dengan pengetahuan nutrisi dari ibu dan juga penggunaan label gizi pada makanan. Kenapa sih label gizi? Label gizi itu berguna untuk memberikan informasi dalam pemilihan makanan yang bisa memengaruhi status kesehatan kita. Nah, pada label gizi ini tersendiri sudah diatur oleh BPOM, yaitu harus mempunyai total saji, total kalori, daftar zat gizi, dan juga angka kecukupan gizi atau AKG. Nah, jadi untuk penggunaan label gizi ini tersendiri dipengaruhi dengan pengetahuan gizi yang ada pada ibu. Pengetahuan gizi dapat mempengaruhi asupan makanan secara langsung maupun tidak langsung. Nah, dengan penggunaan pengetahuan nutrisi ini, ibu dapat memperhatikan informasi yang ada di label gizi secara lebih hati-hati dan menggunakan informasi yang dia dapat dari label gizi itu untuk memilih makanan yang lebih baik. Sehingga asupan makanannya pun juga dapat menjadi lebih baik dan terjaga. Nah, tetapi menariknya, studi yang ada menunjukkan bahwa hanya 44% dari orang yang ada di sekitar kita mempunyai pengetahuan yang baik tentang gizi. Dari 44% ini, hanya 47% yang menggunakan label gizi sebagai faktor yang memengaruhi mereka dalam pembelian makanan. Sehingga kalau kita hitung-hitung, sekitar 20% yang hanya mengerti dan menggunakan label gizi ini. Nah, menariknya, walaupun secara 20% secara umum menggunakan label gizi untuk membeli makanan, hanya 0,5% yang menggunakan label gizi untuk membeli susu formula bagi balita mereka. Maka dari itu, tujuan dari penelitian saya adalah untuk menilai pengertian konsumen terhadap label gizi yang ada di susu formula dan juga untuk menilai bagaimana sih peran label gizi yang ada di dalam susu formula selama pembelian susu formula tersebut. Oke, kita lanjut ke metodologinya. Jadi metodologi yang saya gunakan adalah cross-sectional, di mana responden saya itu ibu-ibu dengan umur 20-40 tahun yang mempunyai balita, tentunya, yang minum susu formula setiap hari. Eksklusi dari studi ini adalah anak-anak yang mempunyai alergi, intoleransi laktosa, dan juga anak berkebutuhan khusus. poin penting yang dinilai dari ini adalah asosiasi dari pengetahuan gizi ibu terhadap demografi data yang ada, dan juga asosiasi dari pengetahuan gizi yang ada terhadap faktor yang mempengaruhi pembelian dari susu formula. Berikut adalah label gizi yang saya gunakan selama studi, di mana ibu saya minta untuk mengidentifikasi yang mana dan bagaimana cara ibu tersebut membaca label gizi yang ada. Manajemen data yang saya gunakan adalah dengan menggunakan Excel dan SPSS, dan metode untuk menilai asosiasi yang tadi saya sebutkan adalah dengan non-parametric Mann-Whitney U-independent sample median test. Untuk sistem gradingnya, saya membaginya menjadi dua. Yang pertama itu dengan berdasarkan pengetahuan gizi yang ada di ibu, yaitu dengan jumlah 11 pertanyaan, dan pengetahuan ibu terhadap label gizi. Dan kategori untuk grading ini tersendiri bisa saya bagi berdasarkan A, B, dan C, yang bisa dilihat di slide ini. Hasil yang saya temukan bahwa kebanyakan ibu yang mempunyai balita itu berusia 30-34 tahun dengan level pendidikan tinggi, yaitu SMA sampai dengan S1 sederajat. Kebanyakan dari ibu mempunyai anggota keluarga 4-5 orang, dan pendapatan per bulan yang didapat adalah kurang dari 3 juta per bulan. Sedangkan untuk anak, kebanyakan dari yang responden punya anak adalah berjenis kelamin laki-laki dengan umur 24-35 bulan, atau 2-3 tahun. Dan kebanyakan dari balita yang ada itu 65% sudah tidak minum ASI lagi. Untuk hasil dari pengetahuan gizi yang ada, studi saya menunjukkan bahwa kebanyakan dari ibu mempunyai nilai B untuk pengetahuan gizi balita, dan C untuk pengetahuan gizi di bagian label gizi. Nah, untuk rata-ratanya sendiri, kebanyakan untuk pengetahuan gizi itu sebesar 79,2, dan untuk label gizi adalah 66,3. Dan dengan untuk overall itu di 74, atau jatuhnya di grade C. Nah, untuk asosiasi dari demografik data dan pengetahuan gizi ini adalah level pendidikan dan banyaknya orang di rumah, serta pendapatan per bulan ternyata memengaruhi pengetahuan ibu terhadap nutrisi balita. Namun tidak ditemukan asosiasi dari ketiga faktor ini terhadap penggunaan pengetahuan mengenai label gizi. Tingkat pendidikan ibu yang tinggi ternyata bisa berkontribusi pada keterampilan baru, keyakinan dan praktik gizi yang ternyata dapat memengaruhi kesehatan anak. Masa pendidikan yang lebih lama memengaruhi cara yang digunakan untuk memperoleh dan memproses informasi gizi dari label makanan, sehingga responden dapat memperoleh dan memproses informasi yang ada dalam label gizi tersebut secara lebih efisien. Nah, kalau untuk banyaknya jumlah orang di rumah tangga, itu keluarga yang mempunyai anak kecil biasanya lebih memperhatikan klaim nutrisi ataupun kandungan gizi yang ada dalam suatu produk. Dan kebanyakan the decision maker dari suatu rumah tangga itu kebanyakan ibu-ibu. Jadi kebanyakan dari ibu-ibu itu biasanya membaca apa yang ada di kemasan produk tersebut sebelum mereka membeli. Nah, untuk dari monthly income ini, orang yang mempunyai income yang lebih tinggi, kemungkinan lebih besar untuk mempunyai pengertian yang lebih dalam tentang nutrisi dan juga kemampuan untuk membeli kualitas yang menurut mereka lebih bagus dibanding orang yang pendapatannya di bawah. Nah, di graf ini menunjukkan bahwa kebanyakan dari responden setuju bahwa nutrien konten dari label gizi yang ada pada susu formula itu sangatlah penting untuk diperhatikan. Dan faktanya di saat yang sama, di label gizi yang sama, ternyata angka kecukupan gizi yang ada pada label gizi ternyata menurut responden itu sangat susah dibaca. Hal ini juga sehubung align dengan studi yang saya temukan bahwa konsumen itu memperhatikan informasi makanan ketika mengambil keputusan, namun tidak memperhatikan label nutrisi yang ada. Hal ini dikarenakan kebanyakan dari konsumen itu menganggap label nutrisi yang ada itu membingungkan, sehingga apa yang mau disampaikan melalui label gizi tersebut dianggap tidak efektif dan tidak jelas. Selain itu, tidak semua pengetahuan gizi itu menjadi satu-satunya faktor yang ditemukan untuk memengaruhi penggunaan label dalam pembelian. Di sini bisa dilihat bahwa walaupun yang paling atas adalah ibu memilih susu itu berdasarkan dari kualitas dari susu tersebut, dapat dilihat juga bahwa banyak faktor yang memengaruhi dari ibu tersendiri untuk membeli, mulai dari brand yang mereka kenal, ataupun dari iklan, dari rekomendasi para dokter, ataupun informasi-informasi lainnya yang mereka dapatkan dari sekitar mereka. Sehingga pengetahuan gizi tidak menjadi satu-satunya yang sumber bagi mereka untuk menentukan pembelian mereka dalam susu formula. Jadi konklusi dari studi ini adalah kebanyakan dari responden mempunyai pengertian yang kurang terhadap nutrition label yang tersedia dalam susu formula, dan belum ada asosiasi dari penggunaan nutrition label dan juga pengetahuan nutrisi. Dan walaupun begitu, kebanyakan dari responden juga percaya bahwa konten dari susu tersebut sangatlah penting dan harus diperhatikan ketika membeli susu formula. Itu saja yang dapat saya sampaikan. Terima kasih.
Baiklah, terima kasih Livia Janika. Baiklah, kita sudah mendengarkan sesi dari 3 pembicara kita. Saat ini kita akan memulai question and answer session. Saya akan membacakan pertanyaan yang sudah ditulis di question and answer yang masih open. Kebetulan Miss Pauline Chan actually answered one of the questions. So let me see, Magda Santina. So I hope you are pretty satisfied with the answer that Miss Pauline Chan has been giving. So let's move on to the next questions. From Fauzia to Miss Pauline Chan. At the moment, there are so many frozen foods that we can find that is produced within Indonesia or was imported from other countries. So do you have any suggestion on how to choose a frozen food that is safe and also healthy, except not only from the shelf life, but is there any other part that we can see from the label that can show us that this is a particularly good choice for the frozen food?
Okay, I'm not so sure whether the question is referring to the safety or is the nutritional quality of the frozen foods. Because I think in terms of safety, I'm sure BPON has the whole process of ensuring that all the foods being sold in the country are actually safe for consumption, So in terms of the nutrition qualities, I think it's not just frozen foods, but just like any other foods. it would be good to really understand the kind of nutritional values that the food can provide. So since in Indonesia, you are now implementing mandatory nutrition labelings for majority of the foods, I would imagine that most of the foods will carry the health, carry the nutrition information panel. So you just need to refer to that, table to identify what kind of nutrients that you are looking at in terms of consuming more, what kind of nutrients that you are trying to avoid, and then you make comparison. For example, maybe frozen meals, you have 5 brands. So you just need to look at the nutritional value of all these 5 types of frozen meals and find out which one is the best for you. What I wanted to say is, the nutritional requirements and the nutritional concerns of different people may be slightly different. So for me, maybe I wanted to pay more attention to calories because I wanted to lose fat, I want to lose weight. And for someone else, maybe this person is a bit concerned about the sugar level because this person has diabetes, So everyone's so-called problematic areas or nutrients of concerns may be different. So you need to really pinpoint at the right nutrients, right? Ibu Siti, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Hello. Yes, I think we have to differentiate between the rules of water safety as well as with nutrition because it's quite different things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Pauline Chan and Ibu Siti. So now let's move on to the next questions from Reni Indrastuti. Question to Ms. Pauline, BPOM does not allow the use of sweetener as food additives for food with Pilihan Lebih Sehat logo. So how about the other countries?
Okay, good question, because I've been asked this question many times. I wanted to share with everyone that for the countries that I mentioned earlier, including Brunei, Singapore, Thailand, and Malaysia, which carries the Healthy Choice logo program, none of the countries prohibit the use of sweeteners in the products that carry the Healthy Choice logo. I believe that Indonesia is the only country that doesn't allow the use of sweeteners in products, for Healthy Choice logo.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Pauline.
Yeah,
yes.
But can I just add on that, however, in Singapore, even though the Healthy Choice products carrying the sweeteners are allowed to, will be approved and allowed to carry the logo, but for products carrying the logo and also with the sweeteners cannot be sold in schools. Okay. So they have different layers of control. So they do not allow children to have Healthier Choice products that contain sweeteners. But all the other populations, you are free to buy them from the supermarket.
That's interesting. So there's a stricter control for children.
For the children, yes.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Ms. Pauline Chan. All right, and then the next questions, both for Ms. Pauline and Ibu Siti. So Lestari Octavia usually find the size of label in a very small size, and it's very difficult to identify the content of the food or the beverage. So is there any regulations in regards to the food labeling to make sure that the customers can really see what is on the label?
Yes, because every country, they will have the guidelines or regulations regarding the size of the NIP or the nutrition table or fat table. So you must have minimum amount or minimum font size. You must have the minimum size of the table. Most countries actually have that kind of recommendation or guidelines. And I believe that in Indonesia, in the BPOM regulation, they also include that. But of course, maybe for elderly, even that size is too small for them. They may not be able to read, or they have to remove their glasses to read. So I think that is the reason why many people feel that maybe the front of pack is another additional tool to help people who find those fonts too small or too complicated. But they do have minimum amount size, right, Siti?
Yes, they do have. Mereka punya biasanya berdasarkan presentasi dari luasan permukaan kemasan tersebut. Jadi misalnya 5% minimalnya atau 10%. Begitu. Jadi tapi artinya semakin kecil kemasannya, tulisannya kan semakin kecil. lagi.
Baik Pak, terima kasih jawabannya Miss Pauline Chan dan Bu Siti. Lalu kita lanjut ke pertanyaan berikutnya dari Siti Muslika kepada Miss Pauline. Could you explain how to educate the customers or buyers to make them consider the healthier choice symbol logo or the nutrition label? Because at the moment, I think most of us when choosing our food, we usually go towards the price indication instead of the health status. So please, Ms. Pauline Chan, if you have any suggestions.
I think it's not an easy question, but if you look at the experience from the other countries, like maybe Singapore and Thailand, I didn't have time to talk about the communication, but I remember the experts from Thailand and also Singapore actually share with us the efforts they have in terms of the promotion and also the marketing of this program, the Healthier Choice program. So it's an effort, it's a joint effort, not just the government, but also, you know, including governments, of course, and also health professionals, like the nutritionists, the dietitians, you know, the health professionals, and the industries themselves. Sometimes the food manufacturers, because they want to highlight the goodness, the nutritional quality of their product that carries a logo, they also help to promote the scheme. So it's actually really a joint effort. And in terms of the, I guess, the marketing of the program, it really depends on the country. So countries like Singapore is a very small, you know, Garden State, you know, city country. So it's easier for us to, you know, promote maybe using the government, you know, website or the national campaigns, you know, it's because the population is very concentrated. But for countries like Indonesia, it's so big and it's for, you know, it's spread out, you know. So I guess it really depends on how you wanted to implement. I remember the experience from Thailand. They have like buses. I think they also use celebrities. I remember Dr. Visi was talking about using celebrities to endorse and support the program, to use key opinion leaders. And I think for Indonesia, you have such a high usage of social media. Everyone I know, every Indonesian I know, are into Facebook, LinkedIn, you know, I think Instagram, anything that you mention about social media, they are the expert. So I think for countries like Indonesia, I would say that social media, you should really maximize it. Yeah, but I think all stakeholders have a role to play. Cannot be just government alone or industry alone or just the nutritionists talking. Everyone has to really work together.
Okay, thank you, Miss Pauline Chan. Does Miss Siti or perhaps Miss Livia has any additional in terms of Indonesia? What do you think Indonesia should do to educate the public better?
Ya, mungkin saya akan menambahkan saja untuk edukasi. Memang di Indonesia masih belum banyak edukasi mengenai bagaimana mengenai label pangan, dan memang tadi nanti Livia bisa juga menegaskan lagi sebenarnya istilahnya apa saja sih yang mereka bisa pelajari dari label. Dan yang kedua, terutama tentang pilihan lebih sehat ini juga baru tahun kemarin, jadi juga merupakan sesuatu hal yang baru, sehingga saya setuju apabila kita semua bekerja sama untuk mengenalkan mengenai memilih makanan yang lebih sehat ini ke lebih banyak peserta. Mungkin nanti Livia dapat menambahkan. Terima kasih, Miss Clara.
Terima kasih, Bu Siti. Miss Livia, apakah ada tambahan mengenai label pada susu mungkin supaya ibu-ibu lebih aware terhadap health statusnya?
Sebenarnya sih pada label nutrisi ini itu dia kebanyakan memang kayak sedikit kompleks bagi susu formula karena agak beda dari label makanan biasa kan. Kayak mungkin kayak ada beberapa nutrien yang nggak familiar bagi ibu, dan mungkin untuk ini kayak balik lagi ke regulasi yang disosialisasikan pada BPOM yang baru tahun kemarin. Mungkin kayak kita bisa lebih memperhatikan mungkin kandungan gulanya ataupun kandungan yang menurut ibu yang tidak cocok bagi si kecil.
Baiklah, terima kasih Miss Livia Yanika. Sekian semua pertanyaannya di Q&A box, sudah kita jawab semua. Terima kasih.
Sepertinya masih ada satu pertanyaan lagi.
Oh, yang
Miss
ini
Clara,
sudah...
sepertinya masih ada satu pertanyaan untuk Livia.
Oh, sorry.
Sudah
Ya,
dijawab ya? Oke, baiklah.
Indra Stuti, ini ya. Pertanyaan
Oke, sip.
dari responden yang membaca label zat gizi apakah perhatian utama atau yang paling dicari?
Kebanyakan sih dari ini kan yang secara umum adalah mereka memperhatikan dari total lemak, dari lemak jenuh, kolesterol, sodium, dan juga gula. Tapi studi ini adalah studi yang dilakukan pada bukan di Indonesia. Jadi untuk di Indonesia sendiri belum ada studi yang menjelaskan tentang hal ini lebih lanjut kayak gitu.
Studinya Livia tidak menanyakan ya zat gizi apa yang dibaca.
Iya.
Tidak menanyakan, jadi tidak tahu dari studinya Livia.
Baiklah, terima kasih responsnya Livia dan Ibu Siti. Baiklah, sepertinya memang tidak ada questions lagi yang saat ini belum terjawab. Terima kasih untuk hadirin sekalian yang sudah bertanya, dan terima kasih juga untuk para pembicara kita hari ini. Terima kasih telah memberikan informasi yang sangat berharga. Semoga dengan ikuti sesi ini, para hadirin sekalian mulai bisa melihat, memperhatikan label, baik itu di belakang, baik itu di depan, di kemasan makanan dan minuman, dan supaya kita bisa memilih dengan lebih baik lagi untuk kesehatan kita. Baiklah, webinar kita berikutnya dari Department of Food Science and Nutrition adalah tentang topik A Fresh Look at Fermented Food. Jadi, fermentasi makanan yang akan dibawakan oleh salah satu mantan dosen kami sendiri, I3L, dan dua tamu yang akan memberikan sesi mengenai fermented food. Jadi silahkan diklik linknya dan bisa registrasi di situ. Lalu untuk absensi dan untuk form evaluasi bisa diakses di QR code ini. Jadi silakan di-scan QR code-nya, di situ sekaligus ada absensi dan juga ada form evaluasi supaya webinar ini jadi lebih baik lagi. Baiklah, terima kasih banyak sekali lagi kepada semua pembicara. Thank you very much, Miss Pauline Chan, for joining us today and giving such valuable information. Terima kasih juga Ibu Siti, dan terima kasih juga untuk Livia, dan terima kasih untuk semua hadirin. Baiklah, kita akan akhiri sesi webinar kita hari ini, dan have a good day all. Semoga semuanya sehat-sehat saja. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih banyak. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.